Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today I am talking to Stephen Fearing. He might or might not be the empathist. He's definitely a member of Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. But one thing he is not is a walking musical encyclopedia. So when the prolific singer-songwriter was approached by former Uncle Tupelo and Wilco drummer Ken Coomer about recording together, Fearing had no idea who he was. Long story short, one Google search and a trip to Nashville later, Fearing has emerged with a fantastic new album that sets his smart, literate songwriting against Coomer's rootsy-rock backdrops. From his home in Victoria, Fearing zoomed in to chat about his vast catalog, life as an independent artist, what's in store for Blackie, and more. Enjoy. I can hear you and see you. Can you see me and hear me?
Just hear me, see me. How's it
You're
going?
early. I'm surprised.
Well, you know what? I always like to be on just to make sure everything fucking works. So
Yeah, so you trust in the technology. This is
I
good to
trust
know.
in the technology. What do I refer to you as? Not
Well, my name is Daryl.
Daryl. Okay, good. Okay, not Tin or
No, I'm not 1010. No. So are you doing a bunch of these today, or am I your only tormentor?
today is you are solely it. I've just come from running around actually looking for these Veladora candles.
Oh,
It's a little candle in a jar because usually you see them with like the Virgin of Guadalupe on them or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Or a Mexican wrestler or some such
yeah,
thing, right? Yeah.
well, this is going to be
Oh, nice. I like it. The tarot. Yeah, it all
yeah.
fits.
So that's the color. That's the cover of the album, the central image on the album artwork, which is pretty exciting. And then I got
It's
a red
nice.
one for fun too, which has got this poster that I was done for me by the guy who did that, and it's Saint Stephen of the guitar pick. So
Saint Stephen, there you go.
Dollar Tree is
Perfect.
your friend.
The reason I was asking if you were doing a bunch of these today is I'm always kind of curious about that part of the process because it honestly seems to me like it would be hellish. So, I mean, doing, 8, 9, 10, 12, 20, like some artists
Yeah,
do, they just bang these things out all day long. And I think it's just got to be like some circle of, awfulness.
yeah, yeah. I wish that I could do that many. There was a time, when back in the day when I was signed to True North and when there was a function.
When Bernie was cracking the whip and
Well, and
putting you
also
through the
when there
paces.
was, when there was a live media, music media,
Mm,
it has transitioned into podcasts and that kind of
mhm.
thing, but still, it's nothing like it used to be. I mean, it used to be there'd be a few days where I'd sit at my phone, it was in phone or in person. So
Sure.
I would sit and I'd talk to the Edmonton Journal and the Vancouver Sun and sometimes the Sun
Hmm.
and the Province and so then you might do three or four in a day. I'd never did like 12. I think not David Bowie kind of numbers, but
Right.
yeah, I could. That would be hard sitting in a hotel room and having journalists sort of file in one after another for their half an hour slot. Um,
Yeah,
that would make you a
exactly.
bit crazy. Mostly, I find it to be quite exciting because I'm finally at the stage where I'm talking about something that I've been working on for 2 years. So to be at
Yeah.
this point means, on the one hand, there ain't nothing left but the shouting, but
Yeah.
I've moved through all these phases of the record. And I'm showing you fucking merch items, so that's pretty exciting.
Well, yeah, so you can get the QVC show up and running. That's next.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, okay. So this seems
yeah.
like a good segue to talk about the empathist. Um, I was looking at your bio and your resume, and I mean, I've reviewed many of your albums. I've heard a million of them over the years, and when I say a million, we're getting up there. It's like, between one thing and another, you've made almost 30 albums in as many years. That is quite an achievement in and of itself. you know?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's really weird with this record. It's almost like I'm finally aware of the output. And
Hmm.
of course, you know, there's with Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, and then with Fearing and White. So on my own, I think this is my 16th, which
Yes.
we actually had to go back and count because I was still saying it was 12 or 13. I think at one point in the sort of cycle of creating, you know, one sheets and all that stuff, we were
Right.
we were saying it was 13. And then we went back and we counted and it's like, no, no, this is 16. So you go, wow, how the like well how did that happen? You know, it's I'm
Yes.
62 now, and I remember there was a time when I was saying that I was 58, and my mother gently said, "No, darling, you're 59." It's like, "Oh, how did I lose a year there?" But, you know,
Uh-huh.
it's a
We've all lost a year here and there.
yeah, I think COVID was the great kind of wiped
Uh-huh.
everything
Uh-huh.
clean, but it feels amazing. You know, I feel very lucky to be able to have done that. And
Yes.
I've often felt like somebody who was not prolific. I surround myself with people who are, AKA Tom Wilson and Colin Linden.
Well, sure, but you hold your own. And I think it's interesting that, there are a lot of artists who get that sort of reputation as, being Bob Pollard or whoever, Jad Fair, people who, obviously churn out more than you do, but still
Yeah.
30 albums, that is a lot more than most people produce in a lifetime. And I don't think anybody thinks of you in that regard as being that prolific,
I don't
you just
either.
kind of fly under the radar,
Yeah, well, you know, there is this thing where my solo career and Blackie and the Rodeo Kings almost two very different entities.
Right.
Unless it comes to, you know, being booked by artistic directors at festivals. And then they say, "Oh, we had you here 5 years ago." And you go, "Yeah, but that was with Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. This
Yeah.
is like different, but that doesn't count." But
So you can't win.
no, you can't. But honestly, I look at I think of myself as somebody who puts out a record every 2 to 3 years. So
Right.
to realize that it actually, when you factor all the other stuff in, that it's almost every year. And then you think about the old days with who was it? I was listening to an interview with a podcast with somebody was talking about Elton John's early album
Well,
output.
anybody in the 70s, right? They were
Yeah, there
putting
was
out
like
albums every
he had
four,
it,
six
he
months,
was
8 months.
he had to do it yeah every six
Yeah,
months,
yeah.
which
It's
just
crazy.
completely boggles the mind.
Well, look at the Beatles. I mean, it's 5, 6 years. That's everything. It's
That's
insane.
everything. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to marvel at Bruce Cockburn because he was like
Oh.
clockwork. Every year there was a new album. But yeah, it's
I
a
mean, as a writer, are you constantly,
no.
is that it? No. So you kind of turn it on, turn it off when you need product, as it were.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
there's this sort of process that happens where I start to get a bit weary of playing material
Hmm.
because I tend to focus on the new material. I'm excited about it. I put a
As you
set
should be.
together that, you know, makes sense. And
Hmm.
then gradually that sort of starts to feel a bit worn and tired. So then I start bringing older material in to try and move it around. And then at some point I go, oh, it's time to write some new material.
Hmm.
You know,
And
yeah.
yeah. And do you have like a constant sort of, I mean, do you have a catalog of stuff that is, in the works or on the go, or do you just always sort of blank slate it and write 10 or 15 or however many new tunes? Is that the
Yeah,
process?
pretty much.
Okay.
I keep a notebook, and more I'm using the
Sure.
voice memo, which is a really handy tool, especially for melodies. I used to be much more lyric oriented. That was, I mean, lyric is a harder thing to do, so I would
I would
always
imagine.
focus on that. And at some point, I started paying more attention to melodies and
Hmm.
thinking of them as the primary thing in a song and then trying to find words that work to the melody. So at that point, this became a really handy tool.
Huh. That is an interesting approach. What was sort of behind that shift in focus, do you think?
I think melody is, it's just, Melody goes straight, it bypasses your logic, your brain. It goes straight
Yeah,
into your heart. And I think of beautiful melodies that have been around forever that most people know. Amazing Grace would be one of them. You know, if you think about the lyric of Amazing Grace, and then you find out that it's about slavery, it sort of puts it into this little box, but people
right.
sing it at weddings and funerals and births and deaths, and it's the melody. It's the way the melody soars and rises. Let's save a wretch like me. Everybody loves that, and rightly so. You are my sunshine. You know, these
Right.
songs, these melodies, there's great power in them, and there's to me, there's no chance in the fact that they teach us, you know, our alphabet with a melody. Like melody's powerful, and
Uh-huh.
it's related to the primary instrument of the voice and being able to create all sorts of sounds when we talk to emphasize the certain kinds of ways that, you know, that's what melody is. And so when you formalize it, and it's hilarious, I'm talking to you and Iggy Pop is leering over your shoulder at me like, you fucking.
You son of a bitch. You and your melodies. Fuck your
Yeah,
melodies.
exactly, exactly. But yeah, I think melody's important, and it was always an afterthought for me. It was like, okay, I finally got a lyric written. Now I can allow the melody in, because once the melody comes in, it starts to be like epoxy. You know, you add the little squish of orange stuff, and the whole thing goes real fast. So it's hard to pull it apart. But if you start with a melody and you love the melody and then try and make the words work to it, which is challenging, but I think you end up with a stronger song. That's
That
my
is
opinion.
such an interesting perspective. And I think it's one that comes with aging though, and doing this for a long time because I mean, I know I've been writing about music for decades, and after a while, you just kind of go, ah, geez, how do I say something that I haven't said in some way, shape, or form a thousand times before, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, I think lyrically it's easier to get burned out because melodies are more ethereal, right? I mean, even if you're drawing on something you've done before, it's not as repetitive,
yeah,
as lyrics can be, right?
yeah. And I think I mean, I love lyrics. I
Sure.
absolutely love lyrics. And I think of artists like Leonard Cohen, who is thought of primarily, I think, as a poet and a lyricist.
Hmm.
But if you really go and listen to the Sisters of Mercy, or Hey, That's No Way to Say Goodbye,
Right.
or even the later stuff, you know, A Thousand Kisses Deep. Those are beautiful melodies, and that
Right.
is what makes them songs. Without them, they're just some really, really cleverly put together words, which is a feat into
Hmm.
itself. But the
Yeah, yeah.
melody is where it turns into a song.
Right. And I mean, I think that the trick too, as you do it longer and longer, is to come up with the simplest melody, maybe because I mean, when you think about even classic rock songs, like to me, I mean, it's a dumb song maybe, but Smoke on the Water is kind of the ultimate sort of,
Yeah,
three things every single
yeah,
human guitar player has learned,
yeah,
to write something that basic,
yeah,
that that primal, that simple, that it's three notes, and they'd have it be that immortal. I
yeah,
mean, that's the kind of ultimate thing, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. It really is, and
Yeah.
it's I the closer you get to being able to express it, and I keep talking about, you know, emotion, but melody is definitely
Yeah.
more connected to emotion, and lyric is more connected to the intellect to me.
Yeah, right. It's kind of almost a left brain, right brain
Yeah,
division
there's
there.
really
Yeah.
an element of that. So when you look at somebody like Prine, you know, his words are
Yeah.
so sort of everyday conversational, but they're all always married to really good melodies that really fit them. They don't feel highfalutin or contrived. Everything feels like it's coming from the same place. But
Hmm.
his melodies, I was reminded of this last night. I was out walking the dog, and I went past this house that's sort of 2 blocks away from here. And during COVID, I did a lot of walking. It was kind of a way to help with my mental health. And
Hmm.
when John Prine died, I was out walking that night, and there was a woman sitting on her own on her porch with a guitar singing Angel from Montgomery. And it was breathtaking. I stood there under a tree in the dark and listened to the whole thing. And then I snuck away because I didn't want her to know that I'd heard that. But
Right.
it was absolutely breathtaking. I thought, what a song. And
Yeah.
songs like that, they go out into everywhere. They go to everybody. Everybody gets them. And
Yeah.
that's a pretty magical thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember seeing him and just marveling at how effortless he made it when you know it is anything but effortless.
Yeah.
But he just gets up there and he would just get up there and da 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 da
Yeah.
and knowing what goes into all of that,
Yeah.
you know. And then I was lucky enough to talk to him once, and he was one of those people who, don't meet your heroes and all that, but he was like, no, no, he was everything you
Yeah.
wanted him to be. Just this
Yeah.
this great down to earth, nice
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
which is, as you well know, not always the case.
Yeah, well, I think Willie Nelson would be like that too. And I think of
He is,
Blue
yeah.
Eyes
I've,
Crying
I've
in the Rain.
had the pleasure. Yeah.
I've never even had a come close to seeing him live, but I imagine
Oh,
he's one
really?
of those people. Yeah.
I was lucky enough. I went to South by Southwest one year, and it was the 25th anniversary of Austin City Limits. And so he was doing an episode because he was the first guest on the
Yeah.
premiere show. Anyway, so I'm standing in line waiting to get into this show, and they come out and they go, "Is there anybody here by themselves?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm here by myself." And they go, "Great, Willie's manager decided he doesn't want to get off the bus, so you get his seat." So I was sitting at the front table, and Willie Nelson was like, there, 4 feet away. So he did like this concert for what seemed like to me, but it was just like,
Amazing. Amazing.
yeah, yeah, winner, winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I talked to him once and said something about, for a guy who smokes so much dope, you seem like, you're doing okay. He goes, if you had my life, you'd smoke a lot of dope too. It's like, okay, we're good. We're out of here. you know. So, one of the other, I love the title of this album because the Empathist to me seems like as apt a description for singer, songwriter, artist, troubadour, whatever. Seems like if you had to whittle it down to one word, that's a pretty good word for it. Is that the way you think of it? Do you think that's the sort of primary necessary? If you got to have one quality to do your job, that's it?
Yeah, I think you got to be able to, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Definitely. There's a subtle difference for me. I'm splitting hairs here, but the
Hmm,
difference between being a songwriter and being a singer-songwriter, to me, being a singer-songwriter is much more about me, 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 me. And
sure.
here's my diary, and here's my life. And it's you risk getting a little bit self-importance, being a songwriter, and this was something that I've sort of come to over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I like to think of myself as a songwriter. To me, a
Right.
singer-songwriter, you can just burn that fuse out. Like, it doesn't take too many years before you've written your whole miserable little life down. Because most of us don't have that interesting a life, especially if your
Mhm.
life consists of getting in a car, driving to a venue, and then playing a show.
Right.
The actual day to day of that is not really that exciting at all.
It's a car in a room and a room in a car, as John
Yeah,
Lennon famously
yeah.
said, right? Yeah.
I mean, I happen to love the life, and there's still a lot about it that I really love. So, but anyway, Johnny Cash did not shoot a man in Reno just to watch him die. He never did that, right? That is,
Spoiler alert.
it's amazing that he would put that out with so much authenticity that you would feel
Sure.
that this is really true. And so to me, that's what a songwriter is
Mm,
somebody who can put themselves in somebody else's shoes. But you have to be able to do it in a way that feels real. Otherwise, if it looks like you're, putting on funny hats, everybody's just going to laugh, right? It has to really feel true. And so somehow you find something in your own life that resonates, and then you can move into that place. But empathy is, I would say, really important. The word empath, if I had called my album The Empath, I think it would have been a very different record. And one of the things that I'm always quite self-conscious about, and in the past have been more apt to, is being a little bit too, taking myself a little too seriously, and maybe Willie P. Bennett said to me once, you need to not take yourself seriously at all, and you need to take the music very seriously. So you have
Exactly.
to
That's the
find a
trick.
way to separate those two things. And don't be so earnest, for fuck's sake. He never said that. I know he thought that though. But
Do you
I
think you were
think,
too earnest? Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, I think
Oh
when
yeah.
you're
Okay.
younger, it's really easy to go there. You can be earnest and righteous, and
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
so I that's to me what empath leans a little too far that way. I love
Uh-huh.
the act of experiencing or practicing or whatever it is that you do with empathy. Somehow it just
Sure.
sort of comes at you, but you do turn it on. You do accept it.
Right.
If you understand what I mean. It's
I
not
think
something
so.
that you basically are wired or learn how to experience those things. You experience what other people are experiencing, you feel it, and then you can write about it from a place that's authentic. That's
But
my
I
view.
find it interesting, though, that you talk about that separation of singer songwriter because it almost seems like, I mean, do you think you have the ability to sort of put a firewall between those two halves of what you do?
I think that and of course, as soon as you start to look at these things too closely, it maybe falls apart a bit because I've just said that it has to ring true with your own experience. Otherwise, it's going to feel a little bit like you're putting something on. You're trying on a style, which
But a lot of singers write, or a lot of people sing songs. A lot of singers sing songs that have obviously other people have written that have nothing necessarily, they may ring true to their own experience secondhand wise, but obviously they didn't write it themselves. Do you think that you can sort of, and maybe this is a weird concept, but that you could write for yourself as if you were writing for somebody else? Do you know what I mean? That again, you can separate that, that wall of I'm going to sing this song, but and then I wrote this song, but I didn't necessarily write it for myself, if you know what I mean. That's a weird concept.
yeah, yeah. For me, the only way I can write is if
Hmm.
it feels right to me. And so
Hmm.
what feels right, what does that mean? I don't know. I can't put it into words, but
Sure. It does or it
somehow it
doesn't,
has
right?
to resonate with me. It has to
Hmm.
feel authentic to me. But I certainly will try and move away from just writing about my own experience.
Right.
Definitely, because that's where it becomes kind of the term confessional. I hate that term. I hate confessional songwriting, like as if I'm confessing to anybody. That's not what it's about. It's not like, forgive me. It's not that. It's
Right.
not here is my beating heart for you all to admire. It's very much this is something that piques my curiosity. I want to know more about this. I felt that whatever it is that somebody that I was close to experienced. How can I explore that? How can I? There's a song called "Sunny" on my last record, which is about a trans kid. And it's like, what do I know about trans? Nothing. I'm about as white heterosexual male as you can get. And so, how do I write about that without A, taking somebody else's story, which isn't mine to write, and B, find a way in? So, I tried to write it from the perspective of somebody who was in love with a trans person, and that I can relate to,
Right.
and that then you find a way in. So, it still has to be your experience, your story, but doesn't necessarily have to be me, 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 me.
Right.
That gets
So,
pretty boring.
so the songs on this album, I mean, I presume that based on what you said earlier, that they were all kind of written around the same time
Yeah, most of them, yeah.
in a clump for this. So do you see there being any sort of theme or concept or overarching, element to this album that kind of unifies it thematically or emotionally for you?
It's hard to say. Those things sometimes come much later, and then other people have a different view of it. So I'm reluctant to sort of come up with a theme. I know that there
Right.
are different themes in it, and definitely calling it the Empathist. That there was an element of that there. There's an element of humor for me in the title, and there's a lightheartedness in a lot of the songs that is something I'm really trying to put more into songs.
Mhm.
I think Woody Guthrie. I think Woody Guthrie. I don't know the quote exactly, but it was, to paraphrase, it was, I don't like songs that make people feel shitty. Definitely am after songs that,
Does anybody like songs that make people feel
well,
shitty?
they used to joke about Leonard Cohen as, music to slit your wrists
Uh,
by, which was
right.
unfair, but there was it was mostly his sort of, I think his voice and the kind
Yeah,
of,
the delivery. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
so, but not writing heavy songs because they're heavy and
Mhm.
somehow that makes them good. I like more lighthearted stuff. I'm interested in that. I think you can go at a difficult subject with a certain amount of tongue in cheek, and it's really powerful. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that's in the title by calling it the empathist rather than the empath. I think there's elements of aging in this album, which is
Mhm.
hello. No
Yeah, but it's
surprise
working for you.
there.
I like, here's the thing. I like this. You got the Imperial
I
going there.
just came from the barber, so I'm
Huh?
pretty
I know
shaved up
it's got
now.
a kind of mad professor quality
Good.
to it that's working
Yeah.
for you.
As one gets older, one has to get a little more eccentric looking.
Hey, you and I
Um,
are the same age, buddy. So,
aging, people's
Uh-huh.
stories. I don't know. There's a bunch of different streams, but it
I
really.
hear a lot of life journeys in it. 'Cause for me, a lot of the songs seem about, again, the road of life, the journey of life. There's, people who are starting out here and ending up there. It definitely is not the product of, I mean, this is not an album somebody in their 20s or even in their 30s, I think, would write, you know?
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, that makes sense because yeah,
Yeah.
I'm 62. So, I know that arrangement wise, band wise, sonically, I wanted it to have a little bit more.
Mm.
Um, Again, as an acoustic guitar player, singer-songwriter, folk musician, these are all labels that come at you and stick like glue no matter what you do. Being in Blackie and the Rodeo Kings has really been good for that because it took a little bit of it's taken a little bit of the what we used to call snags, the sensitive new age guy vibe out of things,
Sensitive
both
new
the way
age
I'm
guy.
viewed and the way I can put the music out.
Mm.
You can't be around Tom Wilson and Colin Linden for
No.
28 years and not
Yeah.
pick up on some of that. So I wanted to make sure that some of that energy came into this record. And so that even if the material is what you're describing, and I agree with you, that the songs at least have a little bit of what the British call welly in them.
Indeed. And I'm guessing Ken Coomer is partly to thank, blame, whatever for that. I love the fact that he essentially cold called you,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
So do you get a lot of that? Do you get a lot of people emailing you going, "Hey, let's make an album"?
Never happened before. I wouldn't be
Huh.
surprised if it never happens again. It's always been something that I've, reached out to people and, excuse me, I wonder if maybe, suddenly getting
Uh-huh.
this email from this guy, very strange. I really did think it was a scam because there was a couple of scams going around being aimed at musicians during COVID.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, there was a few of them. They were really insidious. But I thought it was some kind of a scam. And then I went looking into, his name because I didn't know who Ken Coomer was, never heard his name before.
Uh-huh.
So I went, oh my God, this is really interesting, and I went and
Okay.
looked at his studio and went, okay, at least Ken Coomer's legit. If this person, because I've had people
Right.
impersonating other people reaching out,
Wow.
and you can get trapped thinking that the picture and the name match, and you do research on it, and
I can't believe people
that's
are like catfishing musicians.
oh yeah, oh yeah. There's been quite a
Wow.
bit of that. So yeah, it was quite unique, and I doubt it'll ever happen again. And I'm trying to learn how to be more open to these things and just kind of grab the bull by the horns when it comes charging by.
Yeah, you got to say yes as long
Yeah,
as you know you're saying yes to the right thing. So,
yeah,
so, so, I mean, obviously, it sounds all romantic and stuff, but essentially what he's doing with an email like this is going, "Hey, would you like to hire me?" Right?
right.
Would you like to come and give me money to come to my studio?
That's right.
And I will. So, and the thing that I guess that's to me that's interesting as an outsider from that perspective is because people see it as this sort of, romantic musical blah 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 blah, but really it's a business arrangement.
Yeah.
So, at what point um, does money kind of, and I don't want to, go into the weeds or have you telling tales out of school or whatever, but I guess what I'm getting down to is how do you sort of make that decision to, yes, I'll do this, no, I won't do this, and how much of it is based on the pragmatic practicalities, financial aspects versus the ethereal, hey, I'd like to work with this guy. It sounds like this might be a good album. I mean, how do you kind of
Yeah.
whittle down to making that decision?
A really good piece of advice I got from Bernie Finkelstein, my old manager, head of True North Records,
Yeah, talk to Bernie. He's a
maverick in
great
the
guy.
industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He always impressed upon me that the story was really important, that if you had a story for an album, it was really
Mm.
important. And if you didn't have a story for an album, then you could make one up. So he would say, "How about we get Afra Harnoy to play on your album, Stephen?" And I go, "Afra Harnoy? I don't know who that is. Like, I don't know what?" And that's a good story, and I could see what he was driving at because then
Right.
you can sort of, you put these people together and, it happens all the time. And then
Sure.
there's a tale to tell. Because it's not just a song, it's a song with this person on it, and they bring something to it. With Ken, it did come at me in such a way that I immediately went, okay, so is he just looking for a payment on his cottage in Aruba? Like, what is this? Um, and
Uh-huh.
so we talked on the phone, and I got a sense of him, and I immediately went and listened to some of his drumming because like if
That's
I don't
good.
like his
Yeah.
drumming, it's really not going to work. I
Right.
could produce an album on my own. I've done it before. I'll
Well,
do it
yeah.
again. So I
And
didn't.
I imagine you have options. I mean,
Yeah.
there's probably six people you could call today and go, "Hey, I got enough songs to make an album. Let's do something." Right?
Well, yes and no. Coming out of COVID,
Mm.
like I didn't. It wasn't a good place for me. I didn't come out of that going, all right, I'm ready to go to work. I came out of it with a real sense of uncertainty about my
Oh,
career, my future, my past. Everything was sort of
wow.
being questioned because you suddenly, the carpet is pulled out from underneath you, and you suddenly find yourself like making sourdough bread once a week
Right.
and going for long walks. And
Well, and I'm presuming most of your income is touring income,
yeah.
so that's gone, and right. So,
So I didn't I came out with a great deal of uncertainty, and I honestly thought, oh well, the next album I make is going to be me sitting at a computer sending files off to people, which is fine. But
sure.
that's sort of what I was slowly working my way up to thinking about how am I going to do that?
Mm.
And then I get this email. And what he's suggesting is something entirely different. So the first thing is, how am I going to afford this? Because any kind of Canadian funding is off the table immediately. Nobody's going to fund a record that's recorded in America with an American co-producer.
Right.
And so I then was forced to look at crowdfunding, which I've never done before. And
Mm.
that's a terrifying thing because what happens if nobody gives you money? What does that
That's a
say
real kick in
about
the
your
crotch, isn't
career,
it?
right? Like,
Yep.
what happens if you put up, hey everyone, and nothing happens?
Crickets, crickets.
Yeah. Like, so this idea comes, and then you have to go several steps backwards to
Right.
approach the idea with the correct, budget. But the crowdfund happened in about 3 weeks. It went like this, and then it
Nice.
leveled off pretty quick. Even though I was open for
Nice.
3 months, it was all over in about 3 weeks. So I knew I had the money. I knew which musicians I wanted to work with, and it was just a matter of writing the songs. So
Oh, so then you wrote the songs.
I had about three songs written, but
Okay.
that's pretty that has happened to me several times where I've actually had studio time booked and I don't have the material.
And do you think you come up with better material on the fly? Oh, not on the fly, under the gun like that?
Hard to A/B it really,
Yeah,
hard
okay.
to know, but um, I definitely need to work towards not necessarily a deadline, but to work towards a project. So to
I
know
get you.
that I was going to go to Nashville and work with the guy who used to drum for Wilco and Uncle Tupelo, who's a big, hard-hitting drummer and talks like that and has his own studio in East Nashville, I know I'm walking into a certain thing, and I'm sure I know it affected the material. It was kind of like there's songs on this record that I wouldn't have written 5 years prior. And I've never written them before in styles I've never written before. So it definitely affected it, which is a great thing, which is what I wanted.
Interesting. Okay. Again, because people think of songwriting as this sort of magical butterfly that floats in, you know what I mean? And from what you're saying, it's a notion that okay, I got to write songs that this guy can hammer the drums to, or that I can take advantage of having this in my arsenal, and that we can get a horn section in, and that we can get Sue Foley on, and that. So it's interesting because you're kind of going, okay, here's my canvas. What colors can I put on it, you know?
I think that there's definitely an element of that, and
Yeah.
if I was that good that I could write like that, then probably I would have written more songs that people could play on the radio. Yeah. Um, but definitely you go, oh, you're aware of it when you're writing.
Mm,
So it's not necessarily that you can make it happen, but it's now a factor. If I knew that I was going to go
right.
make a record in Sweden with an ensemble that played, glockenspiels and whatever,
Uh-huh.
I would be thinking more. I would be thinking more of that,
Uh-huh. Well,
and so
I
it
have to
would
say for
affect the outcome.
yeah, I have to say I'm glad you didn't make the Swedish Glockenspiel album.
Might still happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, with this, that kind of says Swedish Glockenspiel right there. So okay, let's talk about some of these songs then.
Okay.
Some of the standouts for me, I really love Best Road I've known because it's got that band slash Grateful Dead thing happening
Cool,
for
cool.
me.
Yeah. Well, so let me talk about one guy now on this record, a guy named Jim
Uh-huh.
Hoke. So
Yes.
I met Jim through Colin when we were doing
Uh-huh.
the King of This Town record, which was the Blackie record that we put out in 2020. Wah, wah, wah. And
Uh,
Jim came into the studio, and we're a very self-contained band. The only thing we don't really have in our band anymore is a keyboard player. But we had brought down Ken Pearson, who has played with us for years and was a really good friend of our dear deceased Richard Bell. And they used to be in the Full Tilt Boogie Band together. So Kenny comes with huge credentials and is
Right.
kind of a member of the band, although he never tours with us. Um, and Jim Hoke was brought in because he's like a Swiss Army knife musician. He plays a huge variety of instruments and he plays them all really, really well. He's not a multi-instrumentalist who dabbles in a bunch, but actually just plays the piano. He's an exquisite pedal steel player. Like we're talking 1970s Charlie Rich, state of the art, that sound. That's what he
Yeah.
can do. He can play the harmonica like Toots Thielman, or he can
Uh-huh.
play the harmonica like Sonny Terry. What do you want? He can play
Just
that.
pisses you off, right?
Oh, but he's the sweetest, most understated kind of guy. He
Uh-huh.
shows up. He's wearing a sort of old flannel shirts and jeans, and just a really super laid back, just fitted right in with the band. And I thought, who is this guy? And I thought I got to work with him again. So on the Unconquerable Past, which is the album that I put out um, shortly. They were recorded very similarly, close together. I got him to send some tracks in through the internet. And then when I knew that I was going down to Nashville to make this record, I said, right, see if I can get him in the band. See if he'll
Uh,
come in for 6 days and be in my band. And so we would track with him on the piano or the Wurlitzer. And then when we got a take where we thought that's it, then I'd
mhm.
say, so I'm hearing horns. What about you? And he'd go, yeah, yeah, horns and maybe accordion and then flute. And he would just have these parts. And what was absolutely amazing is I didn't, there's a couple of parts that I had ideas for, but most of what you hear is him, not only playing it, but they're his
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
And they don't fight with each other. Sometimes you get people and they just play the whole track and then they pick up
Right. They're
another
just
instrument and they
bumping.
play the whole track. And you have to cut and paste, add
Yeah.
and subtract with mute buttons. Not with him. He'll play one flute part that comes in only for these sections, and that's it. And then he'll do a Wurlitzer piano part that comes in only on the bridge. Amazing musician. So that's him completely off the leash on the piano in that song.
Uh,
And just bearing in mind that he used to be in the band NRBQ, and then it all makes sense.
yeah. Well, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
Superstar. And the title cut is an outstanding. Is that a true story? What percentage of that
Well,
is a true
yeah. I mean,
story?
yes and no. Of course, they all are, right? I came
Sure.
out of the studio after we recorded that, and John Diamond, the bass player, and Jim Hoke and Ken, they all three turned to me and said, "Okay, who's the singer-songwriter?"
Yeah, exactly. That's
And I
that's
thought I knew this question would come up, so I had my answer ready, which was all of them.
okay.
So yeah, it's true. I mean, it's
Here's the thing. Could we tell, are there clues in the song that you could figure out who you're singing about from listening to the song?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
know because it's not any one person. It's a
Okay.
couple of people. And
It's a composite.
I had a sort of an idea of a relationship, which I've experienced with,
Uh-huh.
meeting a woman who's a girlfriend of somebody else, and you really connect with them, but it is not ever going to be
Sure.
sexual.
Yeah.
And so it even might have elements of that, but it's never going to cross that line. And,
Hmm.
lines like being called little brother, like, oh yeah, I know what that's like. When you're really attracted to somebody, but
Uh-huh.
they let you know exactly where it's at by saying, they call you
Yeah.
little brother. It's a very intimate thing to call you, but it's definitely not
Yeah.
sexual.
There's a line being drawn there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to write a song about that
Mhm.
kind of a relationship with somebody.
Mhm.
And also the other side of it is when you see somebody that's with a famous person and they're kind of arm candy, they're
Right.
kind of trophy-ish, but they're an incredibly intelligent and vibrant human being, and they're not being seen for who they are, and you can see
Right.
it, which is where the empathist comes in because I had the title, The Empathist, long before I had the song.
Oh.
I came on this title, it's another story, but I had to write the song because I loved the title so much. I had to figure out a way to write the song. And so that started to lead me into this idea of who is this person? And that led
Hmm.
me into the story. So,
Nice. That works. And Far from the Middle is I think probably
yeah,
the most topical,
yeah,
grounded in, ripped from the headlines, whatever
yeah.
cliche you want to put it on, song on the album.
Adrian Sutherland, do you know him?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, not personally. I know of him. I'm in Winnipeg. He's a Manitoba
Okay.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's a really great guy. I met him. I wouldn't say I know him either. He's a
Yeah.
very enigmatic man. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to come down from Attawapiskat and join Blackie and the Rodeo Kings on tour, and suddenly, you're eating cheese in Huntsville backstage, and it must seem very strange to him. But we
Eating
were,
cheese in Huntsville.
you know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
From what I've seen on his Instagram feed, he really lives that life up there,
Right.
which if I were to go up there and step into his world, I would be a fish way, way out of water. Like,
Sure.
so we were backstage in Huntsville eating cheese, and he had a bottle of water in one hand and a cup of water in the other, and he was drinking the water from the tap and going, just he was commenting that this was a rare treat for him. This
Right.
was this was a novelty. To drink tap water was a novelty because in Attawapiskat there's some chemical leaching that's been going into their groundwater system. So his whole life he hasn't had to drink bottled water. And I just thought, I've known that intellectually for
Sure.
years. And I know intellectually about murdered and missing Indigenous women. But when you actually get into a conversation with somebody who lives in that community,
Mm.
and it's not this sort of thing that is way over there, it's right in their life. I thought, okay, so how do I write? How do I write about that again without being? In some ways, it's not my story to tell, but
Right.
so it was about you. It was about having a conversation with you, and you live up north, and then trying to find a connection in the course of, all my heroes live their lives on the edge, like that
That's
sense
a
of
great line.
these
Yeah.
people who are so, they live way outside of the mainstream, but they're going about their lives with dignity and courage and grace and power.
And I think people would be surprised if, they're hearing you talk about it without having heard the song, that then it is set inside this blues rock, Peter Gunn theme, Sue
Yeah,
Foley laced, you know, setting. It's because
yeah,
it cry, people would think, oh, it's going to be some very earnest
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there you go.
acoustic 12-string
Yeah,
guitar,
yeah.
thing.
Well, the
Well, I guess that gets back to the lighthearted thing you were kind of talking about,
yeah.
right? It's that juxtaposition,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I mean it's a great riff if you want to spit lyrics out, you know, it's a great stomping groove.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted was something with meat where the whole band could get in behind me and it's, really go at it and you could
Hmm.
spit the lyrics out, be angry. It's yeah. So I'm glad it comes away. Sue Foley, by the way, I've known for years and
Hmm.
watched her just wow. I mean,
Oh,
she
she
is.
can play.
Oh
Yeah.
man, she rips the roof off. She comes out in
Yeah.
her pink leather and her pink telly, and she's just
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, who is this?" And then she tears the place down. She's
Oh, yes.
tremendous. So she was really, I was really grateful that she was willing to play on this, and she liked it. Which matters a lot to me. She's the real deal. She really understands that music in a way I never will, and I don't think she felt like she was slumming it. So that's good.
No, no, no. I talked to her a while back, and we were talking about some blues song, and she goes, oh, hang on, I got the album, and she goes off and like digs through her records and comes back to show me the cover of it. It's like, okay, okay,
Yeah,
full cred. And then you cover a Lanois song here.
yeah, yeah,
Where will I be, right?
yeah, yeah.
Where does that come from? How does that all fit in with this?
Well, I think to go from May You Get to Heaven,
Hmm.
which is, sort of a lighthearted look at somebody dying, but well, you're not talking about that, and so I won't get into
No,
that.
no, that's okay. Go for it. Go
Well,
for
no,
it.
the Irish tea towel blessing, the whole, may the road rise to meet
Yeah.
you and all that, which is quite sort of mawkish in a way, and
I mean, I hate to say it, I think of the pig and whistle.
yeah, yeah.
You
It's
know?
sort of professional Irish stuff,
Yeah,
but the last part of that, and
yeah,
may you get to heaven before the devil knows you're dead.
right.
There is a sense of humor at play there that is tremendous because if you think
Hmm.
about it, it's sort of intimating that you could pull a fast one on, the devil
Right.
and God, which is incredible and very funny. And also, again, it's empathy at work. You
Yeah.
you don't be throwing stones if you're living in glass houses. We are all imperfect. We
Mm.
all, everybody hurts, as REM would say. And so I love that idea, and it really is a sense of sending somebody off to their death or after their death, that's sending them on their
Right.
way with a sense of humor as well as love. It doesn't have to be, oh my God. There can be
Mm.
laughter as well at a wake.
Sure.
There often is,
Yeah.
and
And
that
should
that
be.
yeah, that's what it is. So
Yeah.
it leads into Where Will I Be, which is
Mhm.
I the album Wrecking Ball
Hmm.
It's one of my all-time desert island discs. I must have listened to it 100 times more, and it still gives and gives and gives, and was probably the way for me into really focusing on Daniel Lanois, and then realizing that he had recorded with U2 for years and years and years. He wrote that song, "Oh, black water, deep as the night, I stand with arms wide open." That song was written looking down at the Liffey in Dublin, he told me. He was on
Wow.
his way back to the hotel after a recording session. I think it was during Rattle and Hum.
Mm.
And he was on his way back to the hotel, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he got that song looking at the Liffey, which totally sheds a different light on it because I grew up looking at the Liffey. I grew up in,
Right.
so it was a very revelatory kind of thing. The guy he's one of the great, great, greats in every sense.
Right.
I've had the pleasure of working with him in the
Mm.
last couple of years with Blackie.
Oh yeah.
He is he's still a very hungry man. He's still looking. He still hasn't found what he's looking for. Uh-huh. He's still hungry. He's still after it.
I mean, having talked to him, yeah, he's a true artist in that sense of, you, it's like he doesn't, it's going to sound like an insult or like something hoity-toity, but I don't mean it that way in the sense that he doesn't live in the same world that you and I do.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Oh, very much.
He's living on Daniel Lanois time, doing
Yeah,
Daniel Lanois things,
yeah,
and what we're doing and what else is happening is only sort of tangential to.
yeah.
And
But I mean,
again, it makes him sound weird, and he is weird, but in a good way,
yeah, he's
in the
very
best way.
he's a wonderfully
Yeah,
creative person.
yeah.
To stand like 3 feet away from him in a rehearsal room with his amplifier behind and look, I can see the chain, the guitar, vintage Les Paul
Of
into a
course.
vintage
Yeah.
deluxe or reverb. There's no pedals really at all. There's an
Hmm.
old Korg analog delay and a thing called a freeze pedal, but that's it. And yet the sound coming out of that amp is like, oh my God, it's uniquely his.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah, and
I
that's sort of the quality, isn't it, though?
yeah,
That uniquely,
yeah,
because there's a whole lot of sound alikes,
yeah,
but it's those people who have that instantly. I mean, you can listen to Miles Davis, three notes, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
You can
yeah,
listen to Neil Young, three
yeah,
notes, you know. It's
yeah,
that's to me a lot of what defines
yeah,
the greats or separates the greats from the also rans is that instant, unmissable individuality, right?
yeah.
You know?
So when he brings that to all those albums that he produced, that run of albums, so like fuck, he produced So by Peter Gabriel, and then Rattle and Hum, and all the U2 records that he's been involved in, like several, I think. Well, he's been involved in almost all of them.
A
As a
bunch,
writer
yes.
too, as a creator, not just as a producer, because
Hmm.
they really workshop the material in the studio. So everybody has a say in how they get there. And
Yeah.
and then Wrecking Ball and Oh Mercy. I mean, Oh Mercy by Bob Dylan is one of my absolute favorites, but
Sure.
Wrecking Ball, each one of those records to me is a high point for the artist that he's producing and perhaps one of their most memorable records ever.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
so that's him. That's remarkable. And anyway, where will I be? I just thought, I don't know if many people realize that he wrote that song because
Mhm.
sometimes people, it's not really their job to be looking up this stuff. And in the CD and the streaming world, we just sort of hear the song. If you look it up by title, it'll say, "Where Will I Be?" Emmylou Harris. If you
Yeah.
might scroll down like one page and then you'll start to see Daniel Lanois' name, but it's associated with her. And I thought it would be interesting to do a male take on that song
Mhm.
because I love it and it's Canadian and that was important to me. And working with him, I really, I just it's definitely a tip of the hat at Dan Lanois. He's a master.
And I have to say, as a guy named Daryl, I have to thank you for using my name in Valentine's Day. We don't get a lot of shout outs in this medium. So,
Barrel Christmas Carol. That's
yeah,
how
that
it
doesn't rhyme
started.
with a lot of stuff. That's good. So, here I have you can make an album of all the songs for people whose names are never used in any other songs, like Eunice and Marvin and Chester, and go for it.
Yeah. That's
So,
pretty good.
talking about a producer. So you get down there, you're with Coomer. I mean, what then? Uh, what's the difference, or how did it work out in terms of what you expected to have happen versus what actually happened? What does he bring to the table? How is this album, aside from what we've talked about with, him playing the drums and bringing his musical, that, literally hands-on element to it,
Yeah.
how is this album necessarily different from the album you might have made, whoops, with someone else?
Well, if I'd made it with Colin Linden,
Yeah,
I would have been working an album. First of all, I love Colin Linden. He's my
sure.
brother and he's my bandmate, and his studio is so gorgeous that I went over to visit him at one point during my making of my record, and we were listening to T-Bone Burnett's album that he had worked on with T-Bone and co-produced, and we were listening to
Right.
Colin James' record that he had produced with the rhythm section from the Stones, and I just sat there and went, "Oh my God, why am I not making a record here?" His studio is clean and clear,
Sorry, Ken.
full of light and all that. But I know what I would have got, and I would have got Colin, and Colin is
Yeah.
a guitar player.
Yeah.
Ken's a drummer. So
Hmm.
we didn't get in each other's. I mean, I know fuck all about drumming. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm not a drummer. Although some people say acoustic guitar players are frustrated drummers, and there is some truth in that. But I couldn't play the drums to save my life. And I think that Ken couldn't play the guitar to save his life, although I never asked him to find out. But judging from the state of the guitars that were hung up around the studio, he doesn't play a lot of guitar.
Uh-huh.
What I got was I got a drummer that I really loved working with. He's one of those guys that plays behind the beat, so
Right.
he forces you to fall into a different groove. And I'm a guitar player, which to me usually means, and certainly in my case means that I often play on or ahead of the beat.
Hmm.
And so I had to force myself to lay back. But Ken is really amazing drummer because when things lay back, they can start to get draggy. And he never does that. He's got
Right.
little cymbals and things that push, pick it up, which is really cool. So I got a drummer that brought a lot of different energy to it than anybody I've ever worked with before as a drummer. He really liked the material. He liked being challenged by it because it was a little bit out of his comfort zone. It wasn't sort of typical Americana stuff at all. And I
Mhm.
think that's why he wanted to work with me. Um, I got to be in Nashville, so that meant that Jim Hoke lived just down the road because he doesn't leave Nashville. So if you don't want to
Oh.
come to Nashville, then all you're going to get is files from Jim. He's never going to fly up to your studio. Um, and I got to hang out with just being in Nashville is it's very exciting. To be a
Yeah. It's a great
songwriter and
town.
going down to Nashville to make a record feels like, you're going to Oz. You're following the yellow brick road and you're going to go make an album in Music City. It's pretty exciting. The drawback was that Ken is a drummer and his studio is built around his drum kit. So there was a vocal booth, which I called the cooler, and I lasted about 2 days in there. And then I came out and said, I can't be in there any longer. This is
Uh-huh.
not good for my health. Like it was just like, "Ah," and, hot and really, there was no sense of
Right.
exuding. So then I'm in the drum room with this guy who plays big, loud drums, which meant that we had to redo vocals and it just
Right.
created problems. Yeah, there was definitely pros and cons,
Sure.
but it's funny. I just got where are they? I just got the record back from the press
Oh.
plant, and so I've been listening to it in the
Ta-da.
car. And now I'm able to listen to it as a thing, a whole thing. I press play and I'm driving down the road, and now it's a record. It's no longer individual songs or mix A or mix B or any of that stuff. And
Right.
I can hear how it flows together, and I can hear where I should have done this, or but Ken brought something to the table that I wouldn't have gotten elsewhere, and I can hear that. And it's
Hmm.
more than just his drumming. Um, we made a record at Cartoon Moon, and it sounds like nothing I've done before. So again, going back to the you gotta have a story, Stephen. This guy heard me on a Spotify of all things playlist doing Early Morning Rain, and
Oh,
for whatever reason, sent me an email on a miserable January morning in 22, and now there's this, and that's magic. That is
yeah.
magic. I know how much work has gone into this, and it's not over yet. I have to sell the fucking thing, but
Well, that's what we're doing here, buddy. We're
yeah,
selling that
sure.
fucking
Thank
thing.
you, thank you. Yes, but
Buy a CD, get
it's
a candle.
that's magic. That is really, yeah. You buy a candle. That really is a magical thing. So it's very
Yes.
exciting to be at this stage and be talking about it and holding it up. It's like, wow, we did it. You
And can you, and it sounds like now that you can kind of listen to it with a bit of remove, that you can appreciate it almost. I know you can probably never appreciate anything you've done as a listener, pure as a pure listener, but you don't have to be inside your head about it as much
know.
as you were in the moment, right? Yeah.
No, I've definitely I've learned a couple of things. One is to celebrate the victories because there's always something to be critical of.
Sure.
Um, and I had to remix this record. The first mix wasn't no good, and
Mm.
that was really difficult. So I went through this phase where I came out of the studio having mixed it and went, this doesn't sound good to me.
Mm.
So now I have to remix it. And so, I've been around the mulberry bush with this, but it sounds good. I'm excited by
Yes.
it. It's finished. It is a thing, and I can at least have a little bit of objectivity about it now.
No, and it's a good thing. It's a fine piece of work.
Thank you.
You mentioned working with Lanois and Blackie.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to tell me some more about that because next year is the 30th anniversary of Blackie.
yeah.
I'm presuming plans are afoot.
You know what? It's the funny thing. We came out of last year was this sort of end of a cycle for us. And it always sort of goes in cycles that are connected to albums. And so this year I knew that I was going to be putting this record out and that
Mhm.
all of my efforts were going to culminate. And so I basically told our manager, if I can make a gig, I will of course take it. I mean, I love working with the Rodeo Kings, but I'm not going to be making room for it. I'm focused on this thing. This is,
Of course.
I did crowdfund, and then after that money was gone, it was time to dip into my meager savings. So, I'm really invested in this record. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, Colin's out working with T-Bone Burnett. God love him. He's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
co-producing with one of the greatest producers of our time.
yeah.
And
Colin's not worrying about anything. Yeah.
no, he's a busy guy. And Tom is working on his next book. And
Yes.
he's just got a painting of his hung at the McMichael Gallery, which is,
Nice.
he's got a painting now in the same gallery as the Group of Seven.
Nice.
Not
And I mean
bad for a
his whole
rounder.
personal journey has been,
Yeah,
obviously transformed his entire life over the past few years.
yeah. So
You
we
know.
we went,
Yeah.
everybody's gone in madly off in all directions. And there is talk of different projects and different things that we might do in the next year or 2 years, but I honestly don't know what's going to happen. Our 25th anniversary was canceled because of COVID. So we ended up sort of getting at it when we were in like 27.
Hmm.
So our 27th
All the
anniversary,
more reason.
I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes our 32nd anniversary or something. Seems fitting
Uh-huh.
for the Rodeo Kings. We always
Fair enough.
joke that we're the most dysfunctional band in the world. not because we don't like each other, but we do tend to sort of um, do everything backwards all the
Right.
time.
But how did then that you end up in a room with Lanois?
We were gonna play, every time we've had a go at playing Massey Hall, we go, okay, who can
Oh,
we
okay.
invite, to make this a really special thing? And
I
they'll
got you.
sell tickets. It's terrifying. You can't go into Massey Hall and half fill it. If it's going to
Right.
work at all financially, you have to sell it out, which is difficult. It's a difficult thing to do in this day and
Mm.
age, and especially for us. We have a very loyal audience, but they're not huge. So you
I
need
know it's
people to
weird because
come.
you would think it'd be a cumulative, you've got your people, he's got Colin's got his people, Tom's got his. You would think you would triple the benefits
I
of
mean, there's
being
an
together.
element of that. I know that
Yeah,
there's now people that were Junk House fans that became Blackie fans that now come to see me, but the
sure.
overlap isn't as big as you'd think.
Mm.
There's also the people that like the first time we played what's the festival in Sudbury? Um,
I don't know, but it's probably got the word nickel in it.
I can't remember, but we played this festival and we did the main stage, and then the next day we were walking around and this very kind of organic crunchy granola couple came up to me and said, "We really like your music." And I could see the butt coming at the end of the sentence like a fucking caboose. "We really like your music, but,"
Uh,
and this is a direct
why?
quote, "you've got to lose those guys. They're dragging you down."
Well, at least it wasn't, could have been worse.
Well,
Could
and
have
I
been worse.
thought, I thought this is fantastic because I really do think there's truth in the there's truth in the saying, if you're not pissing somebody off, you're not doing it right. So the
Sure.
idea that what we were doing would be so anathema to some people that they would go, they'd feel like they had to come up and tell me. I thought,
I,
well,
I just
this is
think you
really
should put that
powerful.
at the top of your press kit.
Yeah,
You need to lose those guys.
yeah,
They're
they're
dragging
dragging you down.
you.
So, it's anyway, how did we get to Lanois? Yes, so Lanois, Tom said, I mean, all of us are fans of Lanois
Sure.
forever. And so, could we possibly get Lanois? Would he do it? Tom is kind of close to him because Tom worked with Bob, his brother.
Mm,
And so
right.
he just asked him, and he said yes. And
Mm.
so the next thing we know, we're in a rehearsal room in Hamilton with him, and he's really intense. Colin is
Yes,
really
no, I know.
intense, but
Yeah.
Dan is even more intense about, really like getting the nuance of it. So,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the thing that I didn't realize about him is that he loves to sing, and that's probably more important to him than anything.
Hmm.
So we did a lot of singing, and in the dressing room before the show, we would sing through all the songs several times. And I think he liked being with us because we're a band, and
Hmm.
he gets to be in the middle of it, and we afford him great respect. He comes in as a respected elder, and he knows that, and that's fine. So then he decided that he wanted to do more shows with us, and then the next year he did some more. So
Yeah. So what do you say? No, Dan. Thanks anyway. But
yeah,
so you're going on the road with this,
yeah,
obviously. Taking a band.
yeah.
Are you gonna, are there horns? Are you gonna be able to pull that element of it into the mix? Or
No, I wish.
yeah.
Well,
That's a hard thing to pull on the road.
Well,
Yeah.
it would mean rearranging the material if you're going to bring horns, and have them play on two songs, that's a pretty
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Hotels, transport. No,
Yeah.
so I would have to rearrange. But no, I've been working with this band called the Sentimentals, who are a Danish trio, bass, drums, and guitar. I met them in 2018. We became fast friends, and they just bring something really different to the table. Their gig for a long time was to bring Americana, quote unquote, singer-songwriters to Denmark and be their band. So they figured out, if we tour Denmark as the Sentimentals, that's one tour a year and then it's done. But if we
Right.
bring in Gerf Morlix, and then Slade Cleaves, and then Linda McRae, and Anna Ege, and Stephen Fearing, and Jonathan Bird, then we
Mm,
can do 2 or 3 tours of Denmark as their band.
right.
And we get to work with these artists that we really like. So that was their modus for a long time. I came in at the very end of it. And basically, they don't do that anymore, but they just keep working with me. So at some point, I thought, I want to bring them to Canada, not
Mm,
just be the guy who shows up in Denmark and expects to sort of have them do the work. So I brought them to Canada last year. We did dates in Ontario, and it was really good. And then we've played in Europe together, we played in England together, and now I'm bringing them here. So they're going to travel from Victoria to Winnipeg with me.
nice.
And why them? I mean, yeah, I could hire 3 Canadian guys and it would be cheaper in some ways, but
Plane tickets alone, yeah.
they bring a different, they bring something to it because they're playing this idea of being on the outside looking in. I think Canadians are very good at that. I think the fact that the band was half Canadian was really significant to the sound of the band.
Hmm.
Because if you're all from the center of a musical thing, you play one way. If you're from the outskirts, you play a different way. And that would be the British invasion would be a pretty great example. A bunch of British kids being turned on to Muddy Waters and trying to figure out how to play that stuff. And they can't play it like Muddy Waters, but they play it like the Rolling Stones. And
Hmm.
suddenly you go, wow, it's exciting. It's a new thing. Um, the metaphor stops right there because we're not inventing the wheel here, but their take on Americana and roots music is different, and that dovetails real nicely with mine because I grew up in Ireland. I'm not exactly Mr.
Right.
Canuck here. Mhm.
You just went to Folk Alliance International, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I totally get why that has why that can be something for a new band who wants to introduce themselves or get the word out or make connections or network and all that. For a guy like you who already has a lot of these systems in place and presumably people know you and you've got a history and what do you get out of going to something like that? What is in it for you?
Well, the presumably word is important because,
Okay.
yeah,
Is it a constant kind of here I am
yeah,
again? Hey, I'm still
yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah.
I'm
I
not
mean,
dead. I have
Ron
a new album.
Sexsmith was there, Joel Plaskett was there,
Sure.
and Ron has had way more ink than I have. He's the famous cover with Elvis Costello holding his album
Sure.
up. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to kind of remind people that you're still at it,
Mhm.
and there's that element of it. There's I'm putting this record out on my own label, so I went there
Hmm.
as somebody who now is approaching it as I got to meet a whole bunch of DJs, folk DJs.
Mm.
Sirius XM was there, NPR was there. Those people. It's one thing to get an email and a press kit. It's another to get the same email and press kit going, oh yeah, I met that guy.
Right.
He was at the Folk Alliance. So it's just a step further. And then there's just the musical hang. There's
Yeah, yeah.
musicians, really great musicians there that you've met and ones that you've never met. And there's always a pretty serious wild card that you don't expect to happen, and something happens that comes out of nowhere, and it's usually a pretty good thing. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. You got to put yourself out there into things and see what happens. I mean, I remember, geez, yeah, many years ago to South by Southwest, going down to, from my hotel room down to the lobby, getting the coffee, and it's like 9 a.m. And there's a stage in the lobby, and there's fucking Ron Sexsmith, 9 a.m. singing,
brutal.
doing his thing for people,
Stupid
people on
hard.
doing a lot of people on their phones, and, walked up to him
Oh,
afterwards and said hi, and carried his guitar out for him, and I just I just felt so bad for the guy, and not in like not like oh poor Ron Sexsmith, but
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
ah
yeah.
geez, what a brutal
It,
doing that 9 a.m. coffee thing,
yeah, yeah.
man.
Well, God love him. I mean,
Yeah.
Ron's certainly done. He's put the time in with that
Oh,
stuff. But
definitely.
it's like breakfast TV, it's what
Oh,
else?
morning DJ shit, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it just
We're talking to some asshole in Winnipeg on a Tuesday afternoon. Come on,
oh
you
no,
know?
no, no, no. I'm talking about me. What could be better? But no, there's definitely, it's not for squeamish. You can't really get into this business if you don't want to get your hands dirty because there's a lot of stuff where you just go, oh my God, really? Like, am I still doing this stuff? But yes, you are, and that welcome to the music business. It's something that never stops sort of turning inside out on itself and
Right.
dying and being reborn. And I mean, like it's changed so much since I started.
Yeah, yeah,
It's hard to even
totally.
quantify it. LPs vanished and then they came back. That's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Radio has disappeared almost entirely, and then this this has come back. I mean, I'm talking to you on the screen. It's like Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly.
So much has
Well, the
changed,
notion that you
and
would be
yet,
putting out your own album
yeah,
and getting cold called from Ken Coomer, and
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's become a very much a back to a cottage industry, you
Yes,
know?
very much about a cottage industry. And the thing that
Yeah.
is, I'm so privileged with, and the thing that's so scary is that I have an audience. They're getting older. My daughter's age, her audience, her generation, they're not used to paying for music. And
Mm.
so I really wonder where that's going to go. But there's a whole generation of people that make their living from screens, from YouTube and TikTok, and they figured out how to monetize that. I haven't figured that out. I'm still in the place of showing up in a venue and playing a concert, which is quite old school now, but thankfully it's still there and I can still make a living at it, and I still love it, so that's good.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that's going to completely vanish. It may change for sure, but I don't think, and because I think the more, we live on our screens and live in our devices and all that, there is that other need, that other draw
Yeah,
to go and, see something
yeah.
live.
Yeah,
So
it does tend to go in cycles, and if you live long enough, you start to recognize that. So I remember when, the guitar was dead and people
yeah,
were playing. Remember those keyboards that where you had,
the guitar.
yeah, like Colin Linden told me that he was told by a well-known record executive at a major label that the guitar was dead and he should just, concentrate on playing something else because it was over for guitar.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and for sure, things do come and go. I mean, the piano,
sure.
the piano used to be in everybody's front room, and now you can
Mhm.
see him by by the seaside getting rained on. It's
Yeah.
quite sad,
But
but
but here's the thing, things come and go, but
yeah,
then everything comes back again.
I think that's true. Yeah.
That's the trick that you
You hang
learn.
in long enough that when it comes
Yes,
back, they go, "Oh my God, him!"
exactly.
Yeah,
That's
we talk
that's
about
what you
that.
need to do. You just
Yeah,
need to live
yeah,
long enough to
yeah.
be
Stick around long
him.
enough. Yeah, you can. So when the trend comes back, you're ready for it. Yeah.
That's right, my friend. All right. Listen, I think I've taken up enough of your time today.
Thank you, Daryl.
Uh, this was a blast. This
Yeah, it
was
was
this
great
was a lot.
chatting with you. And you know what? It was really nice. I feel like I had a good chat about the album that went a little bit beyond, just scratch the surface. So thank you.
I hope so. My pleasure. It's a great piece of work. And I look forward to whatever's happening next for you, man.
Yeah, me too. A lot of touring, and then who knows? Who knows? I got ideas. We'll see.
All right. Well, ideas are what you need. All right, brother. Well, listen, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you somewhere down the road.
Okay. Thank you
All
again.
right.
Take care.